In this video, it's my goal to teach you how to do a rotation of an image around a point that is not the origin. For example, when we get to problem number 2, we will rotate around the point 1, comma 1. But let's start off by remembering how to rotate when you are using the origin as the center of rotation. So if the origin is the center of rotation, we can simply use the rule for rotating around the origin, which is this. Any point x, y, okay, 90 degrees clockwise, so the rule is it will become y and then opposite of x. So what we need to do is first we will write down the original points. So for example, we have point B, and I see that point B is 3, negative 3. And we have point R, and that's the point 2, negative 2. And then we have point W, and that is the point 1, negative 5. So according to the rule, we're just going to do y and then the opposite of x. So that means that b prime is going to be the y value, which is negative 3, and then the opposite of the x value, so that'll be negative 3. And then r prime is going to be the y value, which is negative 2, and then the opposite of the x value, which will be negative 2. And then w prime is going to be the y value, which is negative 5, and then the opposite of the x value, so that'll be negative 1. So these will be the coordinates of the rotated triangle, so we can just plot them. So negative 3, negative 3 will be right here. Negative 2, negative 2, negative 5, negative 1. All right, so let's label those. So that's going to be B prime, R prime, and W prime. And of course, you connect the dots, and that's how you draw the triangle. So as you can see, it's very simple to do a rotation around the origin. Now, when the center of rotation is not 0, 0, you can't simply apply the rule to these coordinates, to the original points. So you know what, let me start by just copying, this is the same triangle, so I'm going to start by copying down those original coordinates. And in fact, I think I will use my digital tools here. To make that happen. Okay, so now I've copied down the original points. However, because this is not, the origin is not the point around which we are rotating. The 0, 0 is not the center of rotation. I can't just do the rule to these points. So instead, I find that the easiest thing to do is to take the center of rotation, which is 1, 1, and then pretend that this is the origin. Okay, so I'm going to pretend this is the origin, and the way I'm going to do that is by making a new x-axis and a new y-axis, like this. Okay, so I'm going to ignore my old x and y axis. So using my new x and y axis, I'm going to ask myself, what are the coordinates of B, R, and W now? Okay, so the coordinates of point B using the green axis would be 2, negative 4. Okay, 2, negative 4. And the coordinates of point R would be 1, comma, negative 3. And the coordinates of point W would be, okay, W is right on the line, so that's going to be 0, comma, negative 6. All right, so if I pretend this is the origin, I get these points, and if this is the origin, now I can do the rule. So again, the rule is any xy, okay, 90 degrees clockwise, is going to become y opposite of x. Okay, so this is going to become y opposite of x. Y opposite of x. Y, and the opposite of 0 is still 0. So these are the new coordinates. All right, still based on the new x and y axis. So now I can just plot those points, and but as I do it, I'm not using the original x and y axis. I just keep on using my fake axis. So negative 4 comma negative 2 would be like, so there's negative 4, and this would be negative 2. And then negative 3, negative 1 would be like here. And negative 6, 0 would be, okay, so there's negative 6, 0 would be right here. And there you go. So I will just connect these points. So this would be the image after a rotation around the point 1, comma 1. Now let's label these very quickly. So this last point was W prime, and then, okay, the negative 3, negative 1, that was R prime, and this was B prime. So that's how you rotate around a point that is not 0, 0. Now, we're being asked to describe in sentences how our methods are similar or different for number 1 and number 2. So for problem number 1, we were rotating around the origin, so we simply used the rule immediately. For problem number 2, since we were rotating around a point that was not the origin, we first had to pretend that the point 1, comma 1 was the origin. So we had to make up a new x and y axis, and then find new coordinates, and then we could use the rule. So I'm just going to write that down. Okay, so for problem number 1, we simply applied the rule to the vertices. So the rule is y opposite of x. But then for problem number 2, we pretended that 1, comma 1 was the origin, and we found the coordinates of the vertices, and we found new coordinates for the vertices, and then we applied the rule. All right, so for problem number 4, we're going to rotate the triangle 180 degrees around the point negative 1, comma negative 1. Since we are not rotating around the origin, we need to take this point and pretend it is the origin. Okay, so the point negative 1, comma negative 1 is right here. So let's pretend this is the origin. So we're going to have a new x-axis and a new y-axis. Okay, so based on the new x-axis and y-axis, what are the coordinates of these points? Well, we have a point at 3, comma negative 1, and we have another point at 4, negative 2, and we have another point at 2, negative 4. All right, so now we can do the rule. So the rule for rotating 180 degrees is that xy becomes the opposite of x and the opposite of y. So the opposite of x is -3. The opposite of y is +1. The opposite of x is -4. The opposite of y is +2. The opposite of x is -2, and the opposite of y is +4. So let's plot these points, again using the new fake x and y axis. So we have -3, 1 would be right here. -4, 2 would be right here. And -2, 4 would be right here. Okay, so let's see. So this must be W, and this must be, I'm sorry, W prime, and this will be B prime, and this will be R prime. All right, let's practice that again for problem number 5. Rotate the triangle 90 degrees counterclockwise around the point 1, -4. Okay, so we need to pretend that this is the origin. So -1, -4. So -1, -4 is right here. Now, we're going to pretend that this is the origin. All right, and we're going to do that by making a new x-axis and a new y-axis. So for the rest of the problem, we're going to use this for the x and y-axis. Okay, so let's start with the fake coordinates of point B. So the fake coordinates of point B are, let's see, 4, 1. All right, the fake coordinates of point R will be 3, 2. And the fake coordinates of W are 2, -1. Now we can use the rule. Okay, the rule for 90-degree counterclockwise rotation is that any point xy will become the opposite of y, x. All right, and you need to memorize these rules. So opposite of y is going to be -1, and then x is 4. The opposite of y is -2. X is 3. The opposite of y is +1, and x is 2. So these will be the fake vertices after the rotation. So -1, 4 would be here. -2, 3 would be here, and 1, 2 would be here. Okay. So this is B prime, and this is W prime, and this is R prime. All right, let's keep practicing. We're going to do a 90-degree clockwise rotation around point D. So since point D is not the origin, we will pretend that point D is the origin. And an easy way to pretend is just to draw a new x and y axis at point D. And we're going to use this green x and y axis for the rest of the problem. So based on this, point D is actually going to be the point 0, 0. And then point E, okay, again, focus on the green lines. Point E will be the point -1, 4. And then point S would be the point -4, 0. Now, what is the rule for a 90-degree clockwise rotation around the origin? All right, even this fake origin, as long as we treat it as the origin, we can use the rule. And the rule is xy becomes y opposite of x. All right, so y opposite of x. So here's y, and the opposite of x is 1. Y is 0. The opposite of x is +4. So we can just graph these points. So there's 0, 0 on the fake axes. 4, 1 would be right here. Okay, and then 0, 4 would be right here. All right, so let's just draw those in. Okay, so this point is D prime, and this point is S prime, and this point is E prime. All right, let's practice that again. Okay, 180-degree clockwise rotation around 0, -1. This is not the origin, so we will pretend that it is. 0, -1 is right here. And we will pretend that that is the origin by drawing a new x-axis right here. And, well, actually the y-axis gets to stay what it always was. But in this way, we are pretending that this 0, -1 is the origin. Everything I do for the rest of the problem will be based on the fake axes. So the coordinates of point D using the new axes would be 0, -3. The coordinates of point E would be -1, 1. And the coordinates of S would be -4, -3. Now, we can use the rule for a 180-degree rotation. The rule for a 180-degree rotation is that xy becomes the opposite of x and the opposite of y. Memorize these rules. So the opposite of 0 is 0. The opposite of y will be +3. The opposite of x is 1. The opposite of y is -1. The opposite of x is +4, and the opposite of y is +3. So now we just plot these. So 0, 3, again, on the green axes, 0, 3 is going to be right here. 1, -1 is going to be right here. And 4, 3 is going to be right here. Okay. All right, so 0, 3. So this was E prime, 1, negative 1. So this was, hold on. This was E prime. All right, because the first one I did was D prime. And that means the last one must be S prime. Number 8, we're doing a 90-degree clockwise rotation around the point negative 2, negative 1. So here's the point negative 2, negative 1. And the key is to pretend that this is the origin. So let's treat this as the x-axis, and let's treat this as the y-axis. And we will use this as the x and y axis for the rest of the problem. So let's see, I try to do alphabetical order just so I don't have to remember. So I'm going to do A and then K and then Q. So the coordinates of A based on the green axes would be 1, comma 6. All right, the coordinates of K would be negative 1, comma 4. And the coordinates of Q would be 1, comma 1. All right? Since we are pretending this is the origin, then we can use the rule for rotating around the origin. So the rule for a 90-degree clockwise rotation around the origin is xy becomes y opposite of x. Memorize that rule. So let's see. Y is 6. The opposite of x is negative 1. Y is 4. The opposite of x is positive 1. Y is 1. The opposite of x is negative 1. Plot these points and you're done. All right, still using the green axes, 6 comma negative 1 would be, let's see, that's 3, 6, negative 1 would be here, 4, negative 1. So, okay, 4, negative 1 would be here. No, it's not 4 negative, it's 4, 1. 4, 1. 4, 1 would be here. And 1, negative 1 would be here. All right. Just connect the dots and do your labels. So the first one was A. So this was A prime. Then I did K. Okay, so this is K prime. That means this one must be Q prime. All right, and that's how you do a 90-degree clockwise rotation around the point negative 2, negative 1. All right, let's keep going. How about a 180-degree rotation around the point Q? So the point Q is right here. So that is not the origin, so we will pretend that it is the origin, all right, by using this for the x-axis, which actually is the x-axis, but we will use this as the y-axis for the rest of the problem. So using the fake x and y axis, what are the coordinates of these points? Let's start with point A. Point A is now 0, comma 5. What about k? That's negative 2, 3. Q is at 0, 0 on the fake axes. All right, so now we can go ahead and use the rule. The rule for 180-degree rotation is xy becomes the opposite of x and the opposite of y. So the opposite of x is 0. The opposite of y is negative 5. The opposite of x is positive 2. The opposite of y is negative 3. The opposite of x is 0, and the opposite of y is 0. So let's plot these points. 0, negative 5 would be right here. 2, negative 3. So 2, negative 3 would be here. Okay, so this was A prime and then K prime. And then 0, 0 will be right here. And that, of course, is Q prime. All right, connecting these dots, man. All right, and that is how it's done. 180-degree rotation around point Q. Okay, that's it for the rotation. So there's a couple of review problems at the end I'm going to do, but if you tuned in just to learn how to rotate around points that are not the origin, that lesson is over. You can go ahead and move on to your next video. But I'll just knock these out real quick. Reflecting over the y-axis would be like this. So E, I'm going to go 1 unit on the other side, and that should be my E prime. Notice that point D is on the y-axis, so it won't move. And then S is 4 units to the left, so S prime will be 4 units to the right. So like I said, this will be E prime, and this will be S prime, and this will be D prime. So that's what the image would look like after the reflection. And then finally, number 11, we're going to do a dilation with a scale factor of 1/2 from the origin. When you're doing a dilation from the origin, all you have to do is multiply all of the coordinates by the scale factor. So let's write down what the original coordinates are. So point D is the point 0, -4, and point E is the point -1, 0, and the point S is -4, -4. So if I want to find the image of these points, the scale factor is 1/2. So all I really need to do as I'm finding the image is multiply by 1/2. So D prime, half of 0 is still 0. Okay, but half of -4 is -2. And then same thing here. I'm going to multiply by 1/2, and that should give me E prime. So half of -1 is -1/2. Half of 0 is still 0. That's E prime. And finally, S prime, again, I simply multiply by the scale factor, and that's going to give me -2, -2. So we'll simply plot those points, and that'll be it. 0, -2. That's not at 0. 0, -2, -1/2, 0, and -2, -2. So that's what the image would look like after this dilation. When the scale factor is less than 1, the shape is shrinking in size, and you would notice that each of the lengths are exactly half as long as they were to begin with. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video. Go ahead and click here in the red apple to watch the next video. Click in the green apple to subscribe, or click the yellow apple for the full playlist.